Ladies and gentlemen, I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you so much for the organizers, to the university, to the European Federation for inviting us and for organizing this panel on Ukraine and on rebuilding the Ukrainian energy sector once Ukraine is victorious after this horrible war. As I said, my name is Aura Sabadus. I'm a senior journalist. I specialize in energy markets and I work for a company called ICIS. We're based in London. And I am absolutely delighted to have some excellent speakers here today. We have Pavel Stanchak, Mr. Pavel Stanchak, the CEO of the Gas Transmission System Operator. We have Mr. Mark Copley from the European Federation of Energy Traders. We have Mr. Doug Wood, also from EFET. And we have Miroslav, but I do apologize, Miroslav, I forgot your surname. From Naftogaz, from the Ukrainian gas incumbent Naftogaz.
Yeah, Miroslav Zarak, yeah.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So today, before I'm going to ask the, and of course we have two people online, how could I forget this? We have my very good friend, Mr. Gregor Weinzettel from the energy community, who has been helping a lot Ukraine these days, especially with the donations of equipment. And we also have Mr. Maciej Ciszewski, policy assistant from the European Commission. And thank you so much, gentlemen, for waiting for us. And apologies to have forgotten you slightly, but not entirely. So before I pass the floor on to the speakers, a couple of words on what's been happening and a very short introduction. We sit here some 500 kilometers away from Ukraine. We are in a warm room with lights, with the heating on, with water on our table. Unfortunately, there are millions of people in Ukraine who don't have that luxury. It seems strange that in the 21st century, there should be people who don't have access to this, but it's the truth. It's the hard truth, and it's heartbreaking. So because the reason why these people are freezing is because the Russians are attacking the electricity system and the gas system. It's very timely for us to discuss in the first instance about the efforts of supporting Ukraine and keeping it running throughout these cold winter months. So my colleague Gregor from the energy community will very briefly talk about this. But in the longer term, and of course, because this session is about the reconstruction of Ukraine, and I really like the way you called it, Newkraine. This is a beautiful word. I think we also have to look at various topics, which of course we will be exploring during the session. We will be talking about the integration in physical terms, in terms of the infrastructure, how the infrastructure, the pipelines, the transmission lines are integrated in the European system. But also we're going to talk about the, let's call it the software, the legislative, the regulation, the regulatory aspect, and how Ukraine can align very quickly with European regulations so that it can fast track the procedure and join the European Union very quickly. So there are a couple of questions that we need to explore here. And number one of the questions that I'm very keen on discussing here will be what can be done to inspire confidence in this part of the world where geopolitical risk is now so prevalent. How can institutions be consolidated to guarantee credibility and predictability? How much money will be needed to rebuild the Ukrainian energy infrastructure, and where exactly is the money going to come from? How will the reconstruction of Ukraine impact Central and Eastern Europe? Imagine there will be huge growth in Ukraine after the war, and Ukraine will need a lot of investment, which of course is going to have an impact, a knock-on impact on the entire region, including of course Poland. And then finally, how can Ukraine be integrated in European markets when European markets themselves are changing? And we're going to talk about that, of course, later on. But I will start off. I will give the floor to my colleague Gregor at the Energy Community to tell you very briefly about the tremendous work that the Energy Community is doing right now to keep the lights on in Ukraine and the heating and the water for millions of people. So, Gregor, the floor is yours, please.
Aura, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me all. I'm not sure, am I allowed to show slides?
Yes, so we can hear you, and yes, you are allowed to show slides, Gregor.
Okay, perfect. So first, thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm really sorry to not be physically there, but especially with the ongoing attacks in Ukraine, you can imagine that we have a lot of work to do, and this is why I actually want to focus in this session on the Ukraine Support Task Force activities, because we as the Secretariat are at the moment reaching out to various stakeholders in order to address the needs of Ukraine. And I would like to walk you through a process which is coordinated with the European Commission, with which we can actually bring energy donations or also bought equipment directly to Ukraine to reinstall actually the energy infrastructure. I hope you can see my slides.
Yes, yes.
So very briefly on the Energy Community Secretariat, as you can see, we work with our contracting parties, the Western Balkans plus Albania, Moldova, Ukraine, Georgia, and we have a few observers in peace times, and this is of course still continuing. We are responsible to transpose the third energy package in the contracting parties. And with the unfortunate situation of war, our efforts, especially towards Ukraine, but also including Moldova, as the energy situation there is also not easy. We are strengthening our forces together with European partners. This is just some images of how actually damaged energy infrastructure is looking in Ukraine. The recent aggression and attacks of Russia were focusing entirely on energy, especially auto transformers were destroyed. And these auto transformers are actually in urgent need in order to reinstall the electricity. Really just one heartbreaking example. We could not have yesterday a call with the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine because they had simply no electricity to have a WebEx call. So the situation is very urgent. And I would like to show you actually the established mechanism and task force together with the ERCC. This is the European Union Civil Protection Mechanism. The Energy Community Secretariat is working on delivering energy equipment and energy donations directly to Ukraine. I will give you a little bit of background on this initiative. It started immediately after the war. We had a big SOS meeting with the Ukrainian industry, where actually the request from the ministry came that the energy community should set up a special task force in order to support the Ministry of Energy. At that time, it was first in identifying what is exactly needed. So we worked on the Ukraine urgent needs list, which is now unfortunately a 14,000 item-based Excel, which is growing every day to identify actually what the components are needed. And as you can imagine, in this situation, nearly everything is needed. We started a huge reach out campaign. The whole initiative was supported by Commissioner Kadri Simpson from DG ENA and reached out to the European industry, and we received already donations. I will come to that, which are helping Ukraine. So also here in this forum, colleagues, people who are listening, if you know industry representatives well, please feel free to reach out to them to explain them that there is a mechanism in place in Europe which can deliver items for free to Ukraine. A few words on ERCC. ERCC is established under DG ECHO. It is a crisis response mechanism, a 24/7 agency, normally working on floods, earthquakes, other crisis situations which can appear. The whole process was developed from scratch in the first days of the war, because normally ERCC was not able to provide logistical support to private company donations. This was changed, and now actually ERCC is able from any place in Europe to pick up energy equipment, bring it to hubs either in Poland, Romania, or Slovakia, and then ship it further to a dedicated hub, which is coordinated with the Ministry of Energy in Ukraine, from where actually the redistribution to the most urgent facilities, power stations is happening. The Ministry of Energy at the same time is consulting with the whole energy industry in Ukraine with over 400 companies in weekly calls to understand and identify where what is exactly needed. Additionally, the G7 coordination has started under flag name Rammstein Energy, where actually G7 is also coordinating overseas support, which we hope that we can then channel through the system and bring as quickly as possible to Ukraine. The results of these activities I would like to show you quickly are already today 900 metric tons. And we would always like to thank the European industry for supporting Ukraine and for using these channels. 72 companies from 20 different countries have already donated, and 35 shipments were already delivered to Ukraine. And as you can imagine, each shipment is like a little project as such, because these are mostly oversized equipment items. And here, of course, the great work of ERCC is to be underlined. They work with a logistical broker together, Maersk, and especially having the chance now to speak in Poland, I would like to thank Poland because RARS is one of the main hubs, very active in the support towards Ukraine. 80% of the goods entering Ukraine are at the moment in close cooperation being processed through RARS, and I would really like to thank the Polish government and the Polish institution for their constant support. The cooperation is great, and it is an honor to work with you together on this. This is how actually just a collage of how the items, then you see also National Grid on one blanket as a British gas tier. So therefore I will not take too much time and just would like to show you that you can get in touch with us. You can go on our homepage. We have also a brochure there. There is also some video explanations by our director, Kadri Simpson and German Galushenko, the Energy Minister of Ukraine, who are explaining the importance of support from Europe and also the donation process. And maybe one short explanation also on the fund. The Energy Community Secretariat has set up a fund on request by actually Commissioner Kadri Simpson. The Energy Community Secretariat is acting as a fiduciary. We received already donations in terms of 25 million euros from different countries, Great Britain, Germany, Denmark, and we will use this fund together with USAID Tetra Tech, who is the procurement agent, to procure also additionally to donations absolutely most needed items, which are at the moment auto transformers. If we go later into the details, what exactly is needed and why the situation is so complicated, I can explain it. It's mostly related to the fact that the Ukrainian electricity grid is structured not as the European grid, and they run on 750 kV or 110 kV transformers, which are not excessively produced in Europe. So also the existing auto transformers, one of them we are shipping at the moment from Lithuania, are scarce. So the problem is not even the money, but also the availability of the equipment due to the special system. But nevertheless, the Ministry of Energy and especially Ukrenergo have reiterated that they are learning to improvise and would not hold back equipment, which at the beginning of the war we were kind of declining because it's not fitting to the electricity grid of Ukraine. But as the situation is so difficult, even equipment which might not be fully functional with the system should still be proposed to be donated or acquired, because the technicians are now trying to improvise and work towards solution with European technology. As I said, here are the contact points. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be able to share this important element of Ukraine support with you, and would now give the floor over back to Aura.
Thank you, Gregor, and thank you for this excellent presentation. I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Paweł Stanczak, the CEO of the Gas Transmission System Operator, to talk to us about the actual system, the actual transmission system, and the integration of this system into the wider European markets. I think you have a couple of slides, so if you could please show them to us.
Yeah, thank you very much. May I ask for a second slide, please? Thank you. So this is the situation. As you see, we are still working and delivering gas towards Europe. This is, of course, very strange, because we understand that this gas which is coming to Europe, this is good for Europe, but on the other direction, the money are coming to the country which is still fighting with Ukraine. Nevertheless, we would like to show that we are like reliable partner for Europe, and we understand what is a lack of heat, and that's why the decision is we do it. And the system in front of you on the slide, it is the vast system. It was built at the beginning such a way that Ukraine deliver gas towards Kiev and Moscow, and it was after the Second World War, and afterwards, when the big gas fields were already working from Russia, the gas flows turn direction, and then it goes to Ukraine and further to via Czech, Slovak, to Germany, and the rest of Europe. And this time, everything works properly, and it was a big transmission, and this transit, it was more than 200 billion per year. It is, let's say, we are in Poland, so Poland is consuming today 20. Before, when I was working in Poland, Poland was consuming 14 billion per year. So can you imagine how big this system is? And because, may I ask for the next slide, please? Because of the war, this is the area in the brown, and we don't control. So we don't know what's going on. Mostly we cut off the valves, and the gas is not going into this direction from Ukraine side. The dark brown, this is the area which was excluded from our control in 2014. Of course, there's a huge number of compressor stations because of this history I mentioned about. So in Ukraine, we are using, like, let's say, 87 compressor stations, which we can say that there is like 500 compressors. In Poland, when I was working, it was about 17 compressor stations. So can you imagine how big this system is. And what it gives the ability to be very reliable, because you always can find a loop and switch onto another route and still deliver something. So during the wartime, there was a lot of pipes destroyed, but they were not main ones. So still, it looks like that the transit is not touched, but delivery to Ukraine, it is. Next slide, please. So this is the comparison of the major transit routes, excluding LNG, of course, which we have at the beginning of the war. The gray one, this is the Nord Stream. The blue one, this is Turk Stream, and the yellow, this is the system of Ukraine. And after the destroying somebody destroys, I don't know who, the Nord Stream, the Nord Stream stopped, and now we have only Turk Stream and Ukrainian routes, and it is until today. We still deliver. Next, please. Thank you. So we deliver first of all, I would like to say what is the ability. We can deliver from this point, we call it Sudzha. This is the entry point to Ukraine, the last one, which still operates, because there was another one, Sakhranovka, which stopped because of this occupied regions, and we couldn't control this gas, so we stopped this. And the last one, this is Sudzha, and the capacity available is 244. Contracted, this is about 109, and used is 42. So what it means? It means that there is a huge capacity still available, and if we find the brave players in Europe who would like to use this entry point in the future, because, I don't know, temporary problems on the Nord Stream and other situations, then we can deliver more than we deliver today. It don't have to be that Gazprom is the only transiting company from the territory of Russia or through the Russia. It used to be that there was some gases from other companies in the past, which were transported that way, and it could be like that in the future. Next one, please. I would like to show also something what explains that Ukraine is a reliable partner also in the means you can store gas in Ukraine outside from Ukraine, and this gas will be re-exported. Because of the war, Ukraine stopped exporting gas, but not stopping re-exporting. It means if it is delivered to the underground system storage, which is huge in Ukraine, because this is like 30 BCM, and in Poland, for example, there is only 4 BCM. So it may happen that, for example, Poland needs more capacity underground because of the changes, because of the fluctuation of delivery of LNG, for example, in the future and now. So this underground system storage could be used for business purpose and also for strategical. And this is something what we can offer to the Europe, and it shows that every cubic meter which was stored there, it was given back through the border. Next one, please. So here we have connection with the Europe, with the, let's say, common European countries, which are our adjacent TSOs. And there is, what we show, there is a capacity, we call it firm capacity, and also capacity which we call that it is interruptible. It means that if the gate between the countries on the border, it is something with no matter what, you can use this capacity as not interruptible. It means firm, and usually players would like to have such a capacity because when they sign the contract, they are sure that this gateway could be used. Interruptible capacity, this is something what can be available or not, could be offered by us or not. It depends sometimes on technicalities. I don't want to go into it, but nevertheless, this capacity is good for a short term, like spot contracts from day to day, from month to month. And this is the availability. As you see, we are connected really with all the countries around, and we can in the future be as a hub, acting as a hub. And the last one, please. Thank you. And it shows that Ukraine is dreaming about being interconnected to LNG market. Of course, the best is to have own LNG like Poland had. But because of the, let's say, the very difficult road to the Black Sea, which is controlled by Turkish colleagues, they always refuse and they don't allow us to build the normal big LNG terminal. And this is those roads we show. They are the roads which are still available from the LNG terminals which are available in Europe, and we already some of them tested, and they work. It means that there are some possibility to survive even if the gas will not be, the gas which will withdraw in Ukraine now will be not enough, and LNG market is available. By the way, the production of the gas today in Ukraine, this is less than 20 billion, maybe 18, maybe 15, depends, because this is also the subject of the attacks from by Russians. And but at the same time, the consumption in Ukraine fall down, and today this is about 20, so it's close to the Polish consumption. And I would say that this is first time when we transit less than that there's a consumption in Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you also. I would actually like to give the floor to Mr. Ciszewski because he's been waiting online, and I think we have also Professor Katerina Hnedina from Ukraine itself, who I will give the floor in a minute. But Mr. Ciszewski, I would invite you to do some opening remarks and to talk about your work in supporting Ukraine from the European Commission side.
Thanks very much. Hello, everyone. And I'm sending greetings to everyone in Łódź, my hometown. It's a bit strange that I'm in Brussels and you are actually in Łódź, but very happy to be part of this. I want to start by saying a few words about Ukraine. I have worked with Ukrainian partners and friends already for 8 to 10 years. We have worked in the past on the trilateral transit agreements, on making sure that on the energy market reforms, and this cooperation has always been very good, and I always had a lot of esteem for Ukrainian colleagues. But what Ukraine has shown in the last years, including in the energy sector, is beyond belief. Despite a terrible war, terrible aggression, Ukraine managed and Ukrainian representatives managed to be always professional, incredibly resilient, and focused on the objectives of the energy system. We see it in Brussels, we see it in Vienna. We would like, if I may say so, to see some other partners in less difficult situation to be so focused on their priorities. This is really something I wanted to applaud here, and I have a lot of respect to our Ukrainian partners. As I mentioned, in the last years, we have worked intensely with Ukraine in making sure that we progress and that our markets in electricity and gas are closer integrated. And I could say a lot to add to also what Paweł Stańczak said and Energy Community Secretariat on the gas flows, on reverse flows. There were many, many small or bigger successes. Some of them maybe didn't get enough coverage in broader media and attention. But what I would like to say, the best evidence of that, and probably IFET will be happy to step in on this, was the fact that many, many traders, European companies, American companies, have entered the Ukrainian market, have invested millions into gas put into Ukrainian storages, which is the best proof. This was not politically motivated or inspired. It's basically they believe that this gas is safe there, legally safe and also technically safe. So this is what we have achieved, Ukraine has achieved in the last years. Now moving to this terrible situation since February, I want to mention electricity exchanges and electricity synchronization. Within weeks, with incredible determination of Ukraine, but also a lot of efforts on our side, Commissioner Simpson, but also ENTSO-E, Ukraine managed to do within a few weeks what we thought would take actually years. We would like to see more electricity exchange going on right now, but the fact that Ukraine is synchronized with the European synchronous grid and in this terrible situation, this is of help and possible assistance to Ukraine. Now, looking forward on how our cooperation will be deepening, there's a number of elements I want to mention without going into details, because you may want to actually dive deeper into some of these elements later on during the discussion. First, our most recent proposal, the joint purchasing and demand aggregation. So Ukraine is not only politically encouraged to join, Ukraine is fully encouraged and allowed and invited to be part of the system. We are not forgetting about Ukraine. We are discussing actively how Ukrainian entities can participate in demand aggregation and joint purchasing. Secondly, as we all know, security of supply situation in the EU, tight global gas markets put a lot of pressure on the European Union in gas markets terms. So we are analyzing the development of storage levels, security of supply situation for the European customers. When we look into this, Ukraine is always part of this analysis. This may seem just an element, a small technical detail, but actually it is not. It is. I would like to share with you that when we look at the security of supply of the European Union, we look broader, we look at Europe, we look at Ukraine and Moldova as well, because we are fully aware that there might be a situation in which Ukraine will need more gas supplies than currently from the European Union. And the current situation in the EU on the gas market is already difficult. So we have to think globally of our joint security of supply. I want to also mention, really going into the future, the huge potential of biomethane in Ukraine. This goes into BCMs. I mean, it is estimated that even 7 to 8 BCMs. We are currently proposing a memorandum of understanding, which will be a political guidance on how we cooperate on biomethane and similar topics with Ukraine. We hope this can be concluded soon and the cooperation can advance quickly. Finally, last but not least, Ukraine has candidate status, so the direction of travel is only one. We hope to be not only one energy market with Ukraine, but also further hope to welcome at some point also Ukraine in the European Union. So this is the direction of travel. Let's hope this terrible war ends soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. Because we also have Professor Knežina on the line, and I think she's been struggling with the connection, and she's in Ukraine. I think it would be good if we could also invite her to give the opening remarks, and then I apologize, but I will then pass the floor on to you. So Professor Knežina, if you're online, we would very much like to hear from you.
Yes, thank you, dear colleagues. I'm here, and I want to focus on the prospects of renewable energy development in the context of Ukraine's integration into the European Union energy system. And my speech will be devoted to prospects and problem of energy in Ukraine. Ukraine has chosen the vector of movements towards full integration into the European Union market. And of course, Ukraine has favorable natural conditions for the development of wind, solar, and bioenergy. The majority of RES facilities were built on the southern regions where have the great potential for this. But February 24 fundamentally changed not only the lives of all Ukrainians, but also made adjustments into the activities of all sectors of the economy, including the energy sector, which currently faces the most and complex challenges. Ensuring energy safety and energy security for Ukraine has become an important task for today. As my colleague said, Ukraine received the status of a candidate for European Union membership and continued its movement towards European integrations. It creates new prospects for the development of RES energy in Ukraine, and I think these prospects should be considered in several aspects. First of all, I want to focus your attention on the plan Fit for 55, the package of legislative initiatives. This package of initiatives include completely 5 new legislation frameworks, and one of them is the carbon border adjustment mechanism. It provides additional taxation of goods manufactured in countries with a high level of emissions. One way or another, Ukrainian goods will be subject to the carbon border adjustment mechanism, and it will stimulate Ukrainian industry to reduce emissions in order to ensure competitiveness in the European Union markets. In addition, important initiatives in the framework of this package is the creation of Climate Social Fund. This is a new fund for financial support of European Union member states, and in particular for investment in households to ensure energy efficiency, renovation of buildings, clean heating and cooling, and of course, all these initiatives can create preconditions for investing of the development of ROS energy in Ukraine. Secondly, there are some prospects to create competitive markets, and these prospects are emerging because this prospect creates opportunities for Ukrainian RES energy projects. Of course, it's very important to implement European regulations of the energy market in Ukraine, and they should be implemented into Ukraine as soon as it is possible. But some of them and of these implementations can be difficult in the conditions of a full-scale Russian invasion into Ukraine. For example, I'm talking about the necessary to implement the initiative REMIT. This initiative should ensure the transparency and reduce manipulation in wholesale energy markets, cancel cross-subsidization of households consumers. But of course, for today, for example, the cancellation of cross-subsidization will lead to increase in electricity prices for consumers that are not suitable for Ukrainians for today. Another perspective is a change in approaches to the financing of RES energy projects and development. For example, the use of new financial instruments, in particular the introduction of the system of guarantees of the origin of electricity, as well as the replacement of green tariff with the feed-in premium system. It's rather perspective direction for investments in RES energy in Ukraine. But at the same time, this support of RES energy and this financing, it should be transparent, it shouldn't be disproportionable, because it carries risks for competition in the market. And of course, we should take into account the latest recommendations in this sphere. For example, I'm talking about guidelines on state aid for climate, environmental protection and energy that were approved in 2022. Another perspective for Ukraine can be considered in the action plan developed by the European Commission for the full digitalization of the European Union energy system. Of course, we're looking to this plan like a perspective and prospects for Ukraine in the future, because it can create a comprehensive space of energy data in the European Union, and for Ukraine also in future, as Ukraine has got this status as a candidate to the European Union. At the same time, we're talking about prospects, and unfortunately the reality for Ukrainian cities is completely blackout, as we have faced, for example, yesterday. And today, almost half of all RES energy sources are located in war zones or temporary occupied territories. And RES facilities in the occupied territories practically stopped their activities due to the damage to transformer substations and power lines, of course, danger for personnel, for staff, and impossibility to access to these facilities. So today, in the conditions of a full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine, the risks of global energy crisis, they are growing. And to protect consumers, many countries are trying to reduce dependence of energy sources of Russia and implement a policy of accelerated transition into carbon-free technologies. So investments in the development of RES energy are strategically important, not only in Ukraine, but all over the world. And they are necessary to ensure this energy security and safety of our countries. And also at the same time to decarbonize the energy sector and to save the environmental carbon footprint and to ensure carbon neutrality. Of course, we have the tasks and challenges for Ukraine for today, and the primary tasks are, first of all, a restoration of damaged capacities in the current and post-war period, looking for investments, implementation of a clear market model, implementation of European Union norms and legal frameworks. Also, of course, introduction of full-fledged electricity export to European Union countries. And the role of Ukrainian institution is extremely important. In particular, I'm talking about coordinating work of the Ministry of Energy, the National Commission, which carries out the regulation in the spheres of energy and communal services, and of course, Anti-Monopoly Committee of Ukraine. And I think it's very important to involve in these processes different experts from the fields of energy, finance, investments, and of course, we especially need specialists in the field of European Union law, because we should implement these regulations as soon as possible and as to be clear by the end of 2022, according to the provisions of the association agreement between Ukraine and European Union. So thank you for attention. Thank you for support.
Thank you, Professor Hnedina. Thank you. I think she touched all the right points, I would say. I'm turning to you, gentlemen, now. Mark in particular. Mark is the CEO of EFET, to discuss the electricity.
I think we'll start with a few general remarks, shall we? But look, I might need that. Look, hello everybody, and it's a real pleasure to be here. This panel combines three things I care a lot about. Poland, where my wife is from, Ukraine, where before I knew anything about energy, I was a school teacher and a university lecturer, and energy, which I've spent 20 years becoming a geek in. And I'm the CEO of the European Federation of Energy Traders. And what we represent about 130 companies who trade electricity, gas, and carbon across Europe. And that's everywhere from Ukraine through the Western Balkans down to Portugal. And that helps European security of supply, it helps European decarbonization, and it helps keep prices low, which is obviously crucial at the moment. And I won't go into it here, but we've done a lot of work in Ukraine, and we'd like to do some work there in the future to kind of create this market which can work for Europe. But I'd like to say three kind of very quick things as we reflect on this crisis. The first one is you've got to pay tribute to the resilience of the Ukrainian people. I loved living there, but seeing Professor Panko dial in earlier with no water and no light and making such impressive points, it's kind of amazing. The second thing is I'd like to just say how amazed I am by the work of Mr. Stanchek, of the grid engineers who are holding this system together. Like, things are being hit by attacks nightly, and the blackouts are far shorter than anyone could expect. It is impressive what people on both sides of the border are doing. And thirdly, the Polish people, the way that they've reacted and adapted to a large amount of kind of migration. It's incredible. And I'll be spending Christmas in Warsaw. It's a great place to be, and I think Poland's been brilliant. Look, I just want to be very brief here. When we talk about energy and the integration of Ukraine, we are talking about a very long-term project, probably more of a partnership than a project. And what Marcin Koczynski said in the last session is spot on. You've got short-term action, you've got medium-term action, you've got long-term action, but you need a vision around it. And that is a vision to deliver mutual benefit, to create value, and to find something which is better than what you had before. And I thought Professor Hinidi's remarks around renewable energy maybe point to where some of that vision can come from. And also the remarks about the need to reinforce infrastructure in the short term and then integrate in the medium term might also point to parts of that roadmap. So there's plenty to discuss. It's an incredibly important topic, and we at EFET will play a role where we can.
I know you do it. EFET always does the right things. So I'll move on to EFET Gas, to our colleague Doug, to discuss the gas aspect and how EFET can support Ukraine and gas companies in Ukraine.
Thanks, Aura. And of course, I echo all the comments made by Mark about the incredible resilience of what's happening at the moment in Ukraine and the support given by Poland and others to them. I was involved in a number of the projects that Maciej referred to previously in terms of how we were helping the Ukrainian gas sector develop. And I was just thinking 3, 4, 5 years ago, we were all talking about Ukrainian gas market, but under a completely different set of conditions. In terms of gas consumption, it was the 4th or 5th largest country in Europe. It had these enormous assets that Pavel referred to in storage that were capable of providing services on security of supply and seasonal supplies into Europe that could be monetized successfully. And it was beginning to put in place the necessary institutional reforms that would help unlock these things. It also had tremendous potential in upstream supplies, but the economic conditions weren't quite right to be able to, for international investors to come in and be able to develop these. And we knew about the potential in the agricultural sector for biofuels. So at all these potential opportunities available to it, that we were trying to put in place a framework that would allow people to come in. But it wasn't perfect. Distribution systems were taking lots of gas and not paying for it. There was high levels of corruption. There were questions about the process of law, whether investors were protected in terms of the projects they were getting involved in. But trading was happening. The international community was trading at the Slovakian border, and gas was moving in and out of storage. And this was in preparation for the conditions being right for people to be able to enter Ukraine and become much more actively involved in Ukrainian energy. Now, I guess it feels not quite the right time to be talking about implementing a market anytime soon. That was our short-term priority. Our short-term priority now is how do we safeguard and protect the infrastructure we have so that there's something to build from? How do we maintain supplies to Ukrainian consumers during this period? And there can't be any other short-term priority than to keep things going. But we must keep an eye on the longer term as well. It's going to be important to create structures that allow international finance to come in and invest in projects going forward, not just in a charitable way, but as good business. And that we have to make sure that what changes we do put in place have the proper institutional arrangements around it, that we don't just lock in another monopoly that we cannot dislodge later, and that will only bring benefits to a small number of people rather than the wider society and indeed the region as a whole. So as we get into this, I think there's, as Mark spoke about, there's opportunities in the short, medium, and long term about how we set this up to protect the existing systems, then to attract finance and international participation, and bring in expertise, knowledge transfer, technology transfer, and then in the longer term to have this sustainability within the energy sector. And that applies to the upstream, it applies to the midstream, the infrastructure, and it applies to the downstream of what the consumers and how the market gets accessed, with trading with neighbours throughout this process to help trade in energy between those neighbours. But as I say, and as was mentioned earlier, it's going to be how there is the confidence that the money that is being made available initially as donations, but later as an investments, how to make sure that's spent well, how it's spent wisely, how it's not used to lock in problems for the longer term, and how or support purely political projects that don't bring these benefits. And I think that's going to be one of the keys to what we have to look for to develop this in the longer term. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll definitely follow up on that because I think these are excellent points. But last but not least, certainly not least, Mr. Miroslav Zadek from Naftogaz, the most important company right now tasked to guarantee security of supply to Ukraine, and also the biggest producer of gas. Mr. Zadek, please tell us the view from Ukraine and from Naftogaz point of view.
So actually, I'm not public speaker of Naftogaz, and I'm here on behalf of Naftogaz Trading Europe, which is Swiss branch, Swiss trading branch. So so from trading perspective, so I'm going to talk a bit more technically. Trading has not stopped. Yeah, trading is going on. The business is going on. Mr. Stanchak has talked about it. We can also sit on the flows between the European countries. The business has not stopped. The business is quite profitable. You can see it on the flows, on the reversal of some flows because of Ukrainian gas storages. And I think this is very, very important that the business is going on and everyone is making money for Ukraine, for European countries.
Thank you very much for that. That was very brief and exactly to the point. And you actually remind me of what Mr. Stanchak's colleague, who is Mrs. Olga Bielkova, the Government Affairs Director of GTSOU, said to me in a recent conversation. She said, the best way to help Ukraine is to do business with Ukraine. And I think she's absolutely right. It's fine to send the equipment and donations. Of course, these are needed. But in the longer term, people need to consider that as a priority. I believe our colleague Gregor is in a rush to leave. So if you have any questions for Mr. Weidensettel from the energy community, specifically regarding the equipment donations and the shipments that are made for to Ukraine, please ask any questions. If not, we can start our discussion here. Any questions? For Mrs. Please.
I have a quick technical question. If there is any, like, sorry, I'll remain seated for the sake of, you know, safety. If there is any bank account or any way that regular people who don't have spare few $1 million could support that activity, could you please send us the coordinates so that we could do our share of helping?
Yes, this is actually an excellent question. I think this bank account is not for private. So you mentioned it rightly. It's more for companies or countries to donate. So it's not serving the purpose for private people donation. But I'm pretty sure that there are different initiatives collecting private donor money. This one is more on the government level. So there are pledges of 10 million, for example, by Germany or the UK government, also 10 million. Because also the equipment which is to be procured from that money is pretty expensive. So the auto transformers, they cost up to several millions. So bigger pledges are meant for the fiduciary account of the Ukraine Support Fund.
Any other questions for Gregor? No. Gregor, is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience?
No, I just would like to thank you for the participation. I can only underline what Maciej, Doug, and the other colleagues were saying, especially really on the great success of Ukraine in reforming the market. And I mean, the storage product was a great success. Several European traders, as Doug underlined, we were really on the internal gas market development working strongly. But as the war is hitting Ukraine so hard at the moment, we need to make sure that we reinstall the lights and electricity and warm water for our Ukrainian friends and colleagues. And look then into the future, how the market design will look like once we have reestablished the security of energy supply in Ukraine. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Gregor. We wish you all the best. I hope you have another great meeting following this one. And thank you for taking part, Gregor. Take care. I'm going to open the floor now, and we're going to have a discussion, and I'd like to split the discussion into two parts. One is regarding the integration of the Ukrainian infrastructure, literally the infrastructure, so the pipelines and the electricity lines into the wider European system. We've already heard that Ukraine has synchronized with the electricity, with the European grid. We heard from Mr. Stanchak that Ukraine has been the historical transit route for Russian gas, but of course with this transit now hanging in the balance, it will be interesting to hear what projects could Ukraine consider and how that relationship could be deepened between Ukraine and other countries. And then maybe we could hear about the actual trading that is happening. And then the second part, and here is where I'm going to invite Mr. Ciszewski to talk about the alignment with EU rules and what Ukraine needs to do in order to prepare the membership. And also we're going to hear and to talk about the consolidation of institutions. We heard from Professor Hnedna already about the importance of consolidating these institutions. So very briefly, Mr. Stanchak, I'm coming back to you now to ask what sort of projects can be considered by Ukraine to access other sources of gas and to open up new corridors of transit, of transmission, and to build a hub in Ukraine?
I have a question to Doug. I wonder if Ukraine, so imagine that there is no war, if all the necessary things which can describe the good hub, are they in Ukraine already, or we have to, maybe not now, but just if you can refer to that, because I know that you are an expert from that field. So it is what Ukraine is dreaming about, to be a hub in this part of Europe, of course. And I understand that for having this hub, the business is necessary. It means that all these deals mentioned by Miroslav have to be done, and investors have to feel that this is a good place to trade, that this market is safe and have everything which has to be in such a market. And this is, it allows also in the future to dream about the increasing something what we call the green gases, like Maciej already mentioned about the biomethane, that this is the potential. We can't, some pessimists, this is 7 BCM, the optimists say this is like 9 BCM. And this kind of amount, this is a huge amount, but there are some conditions which have to be fulfilled, that this source of gas, which is very similar to natural gas, and we can very easily transport it in our pipelines today, that it could be like increasing and will be delivered somewhere. It has to be that the rules for biomethane in Europe should be like very similar to the rules we have for the natural gas. It means the trade should be allowed via the border between the member countries, and we believe that we, as Ukraine now, it will be also the member of EU, and even before we are a member of energy community. It means that we are obliged to put all the standards, all the law which is in Europe into the Ukrainian law. It means that it should be easy to cooperate. And this biomethane is a good example of something what could be launched very soon and in the future used. This is a little bit more difficult about the hydrogen, because of course we are in some projects with European colleagues in hydrogen. It is Central European hydrogen with the Slovaks, Czech, and Germany. But this is still in front of us. And I think that now the situation which created Russia is changing a little bit that attitude. Now we are talking about the hydrogen less bravely. It means that no more the hydrogen is the subject we talk about. The still gas, natural gas, like we know, is okay. And I tell you that that there is a war where a lot of people is dying on both sides, and there is a lot of equipment which is killed. But there is also, I think, this the war against the things which we believe it means about it is the war against the belief that we can control emissions, that we can control CO2 emissions, methane emissions. For example, we already used, let's say in brackets, but used the plan for the methane emissions for 3 years because of damages. So thanks to this war, we put into the atmosphere more than we expected till the end of 2024. And that's the situation with everything. The soil is distracted, atmosphere is distracted. Not only people are harmed. So if it answered the question, of course we are very open for the every source of gas in natural gas. I know that PGNiG today, Orlen PGNiG is trying to find something in Ukraine, and I hope it will be a new source. Today, as I mentioned, Ukraine has ability to withdraw from the grant. It's about 20 billion yearly. It could be increased, but maybe it could be increased using biomethane. Thank you.
Well, of course, these are this is the future, the long-term future for sure, and I think Ukraine has a great potential for biomethane. I was very interested more to hear, the possibility of Ukraine accessing alternative sources of gas, for example, via Poland, from Swinoujstie, from Croatia, from Greece or Turkey via the Trans-Balkan line. But let's talk now, maybe I can ask Miroslav about barriers to trade, and then I would like you to jump in, because obviously you trade. You said that business has never stopped despite the war. But tell us what are the barriers for a Ukrainian company to trade in Europe and for European companies to trade in Ukraine, and what can be done to remove these barriers in order to harmonize the rules and to ensure greater trading in the future?
Yeah, so let's have a look on it from different perspectives. So European companies trading in Ukraine. So as was mentioned here, the re-exports are still possible. The European companies are using Ukrainian gas storages to utilize, of course, the price spreads, the time price spreads. The demonstration of these trades are basically visible in the numbers. You can, a couple of days back, there were a couple of articles in the newspaper, and it was basically this demonstration that the flows between the Czech Republic and Slovakia basically reversed back to Europe, because usually the flows are going in that part of Europe. The flows are going from west to east, and because of the Ukrainian gas storages, it just moved the other way around. So that's one demonstration. The second part is, of course, Ukrainian companies trading in Europe, which is, of course, already the case as well. Yeah. So from this perspective, the business has found its way how to utilize the opportunities already.
Yes, if I can just pick up from that and to take Pavel's earlier question at the same time. Was there a gas hub? Was there nearly a gas hub? Now, remember, the point of a gas hub is not just to enable trading. It's so that you can see there's a market and a price there. So if you're developing an upstream production facility or biogas, you know what you can sell that at. You don't need to find customers. There's a market out there, a wholesale market, and that tells you what your gas is worth. Or if you want to set up a factory, you can see what the price of gas is. Or if you want to run your gas-fired power generator, you can see what the wholesale price of gas is. And it's to enable much more efficient use of the system and investments around that. And where we got to with Ukraine was, well, when we talk about gas markets, we generally talk about hardware and software. The hardware being the pipelines, the storage facilities, the production facilities, and the software are the rules around it. And what Ukraine had lots of was the good hardware. It had connections to markets on all sides. It had an extensive pipeline system, it had big storage assets. But what it needed and what we were working on were the rules to be able to access that. And that's why we didn't quite get there. There was trading going on at the borders, at the Slovakian borders, ready to move in. And the TSO of Ukraine were beginning to offer services that if you had gas on the Polish border and you wanted to swap it for gas on the Romanian border, they could enable those kinds of services in place so that you could optimize and it could become a regional hub. And it was actually quite an exciting prospect to be able to unlock these kinds of efficiencies within the system. And we were getting there with the software. And then this all happened, and kind of that. I hope we'll get back there, but it may take a bit longer.
So many of you are now thinking, oh my God, this is quite complicated. And that's a little bit true. But actually, if you think about doing business in a country like this, it's actually pretty simple. You want to be certain that the transaction you strike is going to be something you can rely on and something that will make money. Now, what causes that? Because really the answer to that question tells you what you need to do to create these markets in Ukraine. Well, when you're trading, you're just trying to manage risk. That might be price risk. That might be the risk that the person you're trading with goes bankrupt. It might be the risk your rules change. So what you really want is you want an insolvency law that protects you if your counterpart goes bankrupt. And we could get all very detailed and talk about closeout netting, but we won't. You want trust that the state isn't going to change the rules or change the structure of the industry frequently. And we have to be honest and say some of the state-owned enterprises in Ukraine change their boards quite a lot, and their roles sometimes change quite a bit. You want the market to be monitored by institutions who are competent. I was an energy regulator for 10 years. Everybody complains about having energy regulators, but it's worse when they're not there. You need trading to be easy, which means you need standard contracts. You don't want to have to do, I don't want to have to agree a deal with you, which is completely different to the deal I agree with you, to the deal I agree with you. You want a standard contract and you want a lot of people to use it so that when you want to get in or out of the contract, there's people to sell to and buy from. And that is really where we need to work up to. And Doug's hardware software distinction is absolutely right. But if there's one thing that will make trading in Ukraine kick off, it's trust in institutions, which is built over time.
That's excellent. And before I go to Professor Hnedina, I'd actually like to invite Mr. Ciszewski to talk to us first of all about the rules that Ukraine needs to implement in the run-up to its membership of the European Union, but also of the fact that the European Union itself is currently changing the rules. For the last 30 years, we've been hearing about the importance of free trading and the importance of free prices, prices that are set by demand and supply. This week, of course, we heard from the European Commission that the wholesale price is going to be capped. So we see intervention from the European Union, something that we never thought was going to happen for the last 30 years. So we would like to get some clarity from your side, Mr. Ciszewski. What direction is the European Union taking and how Ukraine is going to follow that direction?
Thank you. That's a number of interesting topics to address. Let me start by today. Quite a disappointing day for us here in the Commission because our proposal didn't go through. This means that the operationalization of the EU energy platform, unfortunately linked to the price cap discussion, suffer as a result. which means there is risk of delays in the tenders that we plan to organize. I don't want to dwell too much on the price caps. I can imagine what kind of attitude you have to this, especially on the IFED side. But as you know, and you follow the discussion very close, you know that the Commission was working quite long on proposing this price correction mechanism. We were a bit skeptical about proposing actually a price cap. And finally, what we proposed is a price correction mechanism. It is to be applicable in very particular circumstances. And it comes across the calls by some member states that such a price correction mechanism or a price cap should be proposed. So we did, and I think we've been criticized by both sides of this debate. Those that wanted a price cap say this is not enough. This is definitely not a serious price cap. Those that believe that no mechanism should be introduced, they say that even such a mechanism, which is far from being used in today's energy market conditions, already this destroys the markets. So I wouldn't read too much into this. We are in a very serious situation on the EU gas markets. Member states and consumers, EU's industry is suffering. Global markets are extremely tight. We are looking into 2023, preparing for it already. And there is a lot of political discussion on how we should address that. The current price levels or the recent price levels were far from sustainable. But personally, I don't think that a very strong price cap can actually address the problem. So we are working on many other aspects, such as demand reduction, which is absolutely key, and it's a no regret option, the supply side, with the EU energy platform. But as IFED, I'm sure will confirm, I mean, it is not about us being skillful enough. There's not much cheap, abundant gas globally that we could actually secure. So difficult situation here, and I just hope that today's decision in the Council will not derail or delay too much the setting up of the EU energy platform. Our intention was to launch the first tenders supporting storage filling end of March. Now this calendar is in question. Coming back to Ukraine, I want to mention a timeline for some of the reforms with Ukraine and the fact that we are discussing still reforms in Ukraine. The topic of reforms, it was a topic between the Commission, DG Energy and Ukraine for several years. As you know, it's not only in Ukraine, in many member states as well, energy market reforms, robustness of institutions, making sure that the market works according to the rules. This is not an easy topic. I welcome very much IFED's statement about the regulators. I think I very much subscribe to what you said. So here we agree. With the war, of course, our discussion on the reforms, I mean, for some time was frozen, but this is yet another incredibly strong signal from Ukraine. We are back in this discussion. Ukraine is not only postponing this discussion about electricity and gas market reforms for after the war. Actually, we are actively working on this. And our objective, and here is an important date against which we are working, is 2024 and the full integration of Ukraine into the EU internal electricity market. And I will not bore you with all the detailed steps, but we are actively working with Ukraine on robustness of the institutions, on intraday or market coupling to make sure that this can happen by 2024. Not to be too long on gas side of things, I already signaled that what we are proposing, a lot of attention is on the price correction mechanism, but we also propose more robust rules on solidarity, gas solidarity between member states, and we also make openings towards solidarity between energy community and the European Union. As you know very well, we as the Commission, we cannot propose legislation with direct impact. We cannot regulate the acquis of energy community, but we are Ukraine and energy community contracting parties are never forgotten, are part of the process to the extent we can legally do that. So as said, EU energy platform is not only open to Ukraine, we are actively working with the entities in Ukraine to make sure that they actually will participate in the process and they will have a say in the process and potentially could also benefit from this. The timeline for this particular work stream is really the next weeks and months. Let's hope we have a legal basis on which we can base ourselves when organizing the practical side of the platform, as well as the first tenders ahead of the storage season. Thanks.
Thank you. I really appreciated that answer. Thank you very much. I guess my colleagues from MIFED also appreciated your honest answer to my question. Professor Chnet, now you made some excellent points, and I'd like to get back to you specifically with regards to the consolidation of institutions in Ukraine. We've heard it mentioned here, but Doug has mentioned it, Mark as well. Could you please tell us if you maybe have a vision on how these institutions could be consolidated, on how corporate governance could be put in place to ensure that any reform that is taken from now on will be followed through, and Ukraine will stay the course?
Thank you. As for me, the most important issue is to organize these implementations of legal framework step by step. Of course, it's a multi-stage process, and as my colleagues said, it is possible to realize not very quickly, and for example, as we said, at the end by 2024. As for me, the most important to make a certain plan of these legal implementations, and of course it's impossible without the improvement of quality of regulations. For coordinating work of these organizations, as for me it's important to form working groups of experts and to organize meetings and to form strategy plan, to elaborate mechanisms of collaborating. Of course, it's important for such institutions like the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine, the national commissions that carries out the regulation in the spheres of energy and communal services. And why I'm talking about the anti-monopoly committee, because it's very important to ensure the transparency model, maybe auction model of energy market. And it's also important to prevent manipulations in the energy markets and to ensure this transparency. So maybe, as for me, the most important is communication, networking of this organization and the certain strategy, and then organization and economical mechanism, how to implement the strategy into the life.
I have a few more questions of my own, but I believe we have 10 more minutes, right? Out of time completely. Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, unless there are burning questions, and someone wants to address any questions to the panelists, then I will have to wrap. You, Pavel, you want to ask a question? I don't want to take away your questions, but if I well, as far as I understand, we don't have any more time, so please feel free to ask questions.
Hope it works. So I'm gonna be very brief. I think that the whole theme around this entire conference is actually also on what can we do to help reconstruct in Ukraine. We've been talking a lot about what can we actually do to stir up the trading with the countries and everything. So one of the good features, one of the very good advantages to actually stir up trading in a given country is to be close to a country that already has a good established and liquid market, be it on power, be it on gas. The thing is that we are not exactly very good on that when it comes to EU neighbors of Ukraine. If we just go around, we take a tour from Poland all the way to Romania, there's a whole set of issues that actually relates to issues around the stability of the regulatory environment, that relates to the issues around monopolization, that relates to issues around market access, market entry, barriers to trade, you name it. There's so much still to be done, and we are not exactly setting the right example and actually steering up the ability for those people to find transaction partners. I guess probably Miroslav can also relate on that when trying to conclude deals. And I'm gonna, just ask for a broad view on this. Is there's, probably there's some homework on us in this respect. If anyone wants to react, go ahead.
Be super brief, and Commission colleague made a really good answer to the question before. But look, let's be honest. A European market in energy, whatever you think about Europe more generally, is an incredibly good idea. It's more secure, it's cheaper, and it's greener if you work together. And we've spent 20 years developing a really quite good framework that should create a European market. And now we've stopped enforcing it. And frankly, the basics are simple. Enforce the rules that are there, get people to work together. I know it's easier said than done, because actually what will help Ukraine is Ukraine helping itself, regional partners helping Ukraine, Europe helping Ukraine, and the world helping Ukraine. And it needs all of those.
Wonderful. Anyone else want to add to that? Pavel, Doug, Miroslav? No? Mr. Hnedina? Mr. No. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you so much for the excellent presentations and for your time, and thank you for the invitation once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.